Hello, guys. Welcome in. I hope you've had a lovely sunny week. It's definitely been very sunny here in London so far, and obviously super British to talk about the weather straight away, but it would be rude not to when it's been so nice. Welcome to the second in our mini series of webinars alongside Hive Business. For those of you who might not have joined us in the first webinar, Hive is an organization that can really help with all aspects of your dental business, whether it's tax, whether it's marketing, whether it's getting an oversight of your financials. Hive is there to help with all aspects of that. Tonight, in particular, Hive and in particular Dan and Ross will be talking about a topic that is really interesting amongst lots of our clear aligner providers, and will hopefully give you some insight where you feel you might be lacking or some direction as to where you might go in the future. Tonight, we'll be talking about practice ownership versus sort of becoming a really successful superstar associate, and what the benefits and the drawbacks of each of those are, and what the next steps are if you really want to take the leap into practice ownership as well. So just before I hand over to Dan and Ross, tonight there will be a few Slido questions as part of the presentation. We would really, really appreciate your participation in them. So if you have your phone to hand, get ready to scan some QR codes. We promise there's only a few questions. They take 2 seconds, one click to answer. So please do jump in and help us by participating with those. The more that you'll participate, the more that we can sort of tailor our advice and the webinar to you guys as well. So that's enough from me. I'm now going to hand over to Hive, who will take you through for the next 45 minutes or so, and then we will likely have some time at the end for questions as well. I will be monitoring the chat tool, so if anyone has anything that springs to mind, drop it in the chat tool. I will jump in and ask your questions as they come along. But for now, guys, enjoy, and I will hand you over to Dan and to Ross.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks. Yeah, well, you've done a great job kind of introducing us there. Actually, you've mentioned the Q&A function. You know, we really would welcome any questions that you've got. Actually, enables us to give a much more kind of tailored position and give you more value. Also, just to say, the recording will be coming out in the coming days afterwards, so you get a recording of this. So probably just to introduce myself, I'm Ross Martin. I'm the group chairman of the Hive Business Group. I'm a chartered accountant by trade for my sins. And I'd also like to introduce Dan Fine, who's our group executive director as well.
Hi there. It's a very nice picture of me as well, isn't it? Wow. Didn't know that was in there. Good.
Sorry, so we work with hundreds of dentists across all the different services that we provide. So yeah, really looking forward to talking about this today, because we literally talk about it ourselves internally all the time, and to our clients as well, who many are practice owners, many are thinking about becoming practice owners, and many are associates as well. So really interested to kind of break that down. Well, I'd like to start with just to get a bit of a bearing on the kind of profile we've got here, is the first question. So we're going to do 2 or 3 questions in a row here now, so you only have to get your phone out once to do it. But I understand what you have to do is scan the QR code with your phone. That should pop you through to a really slick question answering facility. What we'd like to know to start with is just let us know if you are an associate or a practice owner. I'll take your bearing, Ryan, when you've got some answers in, and then.
And if you're on your phone watching this, guys, you can pop off, if you click on slido.com and enter that number as well, you can just jump into another tab and answer that as well. So we've got 5 people answered so far. Let's see if we can get to 10, Ross, and then we'll move forward.
I was going to say, I was wondering whether it's going to be 50-50, but we can't have 50-50 with 5, so. Let's roll with that, I think.
Yeah, let's go.
Oh, all associates. There we go. So that does help. It means that we can really kind of fine tune and give a bit more balance towards the associates here. So I think what we're also going to do, move on to the next question. We'll get a bearing. This is going to be really good then, because the associates here must be thinking about practice ownership. So if we can see where you're at with your current status, that would be really helpful too.
So we've got 5 answers there, so I think that might be the same group.
Yeah.
So maybe let's see the scores.
Oh, we've got 7. That's
Oh, great.
On the fence, definitely a practice owner. And interestingly, none are staying as an associate. Not definitely, anyway. Great. So we had a question for the practice owners here. I might skip through that quite quickly if we don't think there are any here. But what will be really good, okay, so for associates you want to be practice owners, rank how important each of these are as reasons for wanting to make the leap. I'm assuming that the slide will have the options in there.
Yeah, there's options in there.
Thank you. This is really good stuff. Let's skip through, see what we've got. Okay, so this is really good. Very clear requirement to build long-term wealth. Less clinical work. Oh, we've got a little bit of a live adjustment there. Bigger proportion of earnings to take home. Less important managing a team. Building a dental environment. Key opinion leads. So that's really good. Actually, really, really helpful. Gives us a huge amount of context. So I think that thanks for your involvement there with that one. I think that's all the kind of the forced interaction with slides we're going to make you do. But love any questions, and I will hand over to Dan, who's going to talk a little bit about his reflection on the dental career.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. So when Sonia and I first started speaking about this, it was almost, we wanted to give a side-by-side of the pros and cons of being a practice owner, because quite often it seems that you reach a point in your career and it's the natural next step to buy a practice, which we're not necessarily sure is the case. As with everything, context is really important. And when we set up Hive 10 years ago, it was very much to become the partner for dentists, to almost get their financial breakthrough and figure out what works for them. So hopefully today we're going to give you a bit of a side-by-side of what we believe kind of both options look like, and a way of appraising which one probably fits best with you. And as Ross said, really do kind of pepper us with questions. It'll be good for everyone, I think. Firstly, I just wanted to speak about the journey to becoming a dentist, which you all obviously did. It kind of was fairly regimented in a sense, and it must have started quite early. So, you know, in your teens, you must have been thinking, right, well, I'm going to have to do these GCSEs, get these grades, and then I'm going to have to do these A levels to get into these dental schools. So it was kind of quite specific what you had to achieve. It required a high level of performance, discipline, and intellect to achieve it. But there was a kind of logical, linear process to move forward. So then you leave university, you kind of do your VT, then you probably practice for a bit and really hone in your craft, and then you possibly go and start speaking to people like 32Co and learning wider skills. And then there probably comes a point of saying, I'm very used to kind of nudging forward progress on a kind of few yearly cycle. What do I do next? And I think it's at that point that people go, well, is it buy a practice? And it might be, but I want to say that's not a linear step forward. I'd say that's very much a lateral step. So even though you are an expert in the craft, actually much of what you've gleaned in your career and lots of your skill sets won't translate in the same way. So it's very good that you understand the industry going into it, but you are ultimately becoming a business owner. So what we're going to try and do now is help you figure out if that sounds good to you. So the way we look at this is through the lenses of income, wealth, time, and gratification. So income is what you want to get paid, kind of on a monthly basis. So I suppose it could be want or need to get paid. The difference being, if income's really important for you today and you need it as high as possible, that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is, I can get by on this amount of income for a period of time. The next layer is looking at wealth. So it's basically what asset pool you're looking to build. Does it include a dental practice? Does it just include stocks and shares? Does it have all other things? And what number does it need to be? The next layer is time. So there's a kind of two elements to time. So it's how much you want to be working. So do you want to work 3 days a week? Do you want to work constantly? And when you're looking to retire as well. And the final element is gratification. So it's a little bit harder to quantify, but it's what are you going to enjoy? Because the two paths are very distinct, essentially, and different personality types will enjoy different ones for different reasons. So what we're trying to do, and you might even want to note down to yourself, kind of thinking about these elements, what do you want? Because it's almost the trade-offs between these that will allow you to kind of discover what the right pathway is. So, for example, the most amount of wealth will probably have compromises in income, and the most amount of income will probably have compromises on time. And you kind of catch my drift. And the way that works for you or not is how you get gratification from what you do. Some people are very kind of connected with their career, and some people do their career. They might enjoy it, but it's more of a means to the end so they can enjoy their life. So kind of looking forward, we believe that as an associate, you, in some senses, already a business owner. So we believe, and how we try and work with our clients at Hive, that you should be taking this kind of strategic view, even if it doesn't feature buying a practice in it. And it's important for you to work out all these metrics along the way. We will return to this when we've kind of done more content and kind of compare owner and associate through these lenses, hopefully make it more useful for you.
Yeah. Great. So if we zoom in a little bit on the associate element of things, what we want to try and do, and it's not going to be kind of a perfect tailored fit for everyone. What we want to try and do is give you an illustration of the way it could look if you ascertained, following this presentation or following a more detailed conversation with us, but you know what? Actually, practice ownership isn't right for us, but I've still got these kind of personal objectives. So the way I'd probably frame it, and this is, it's a helpful framework. So the roadmap to be an associate investor, so someone who is what we would now be calling a successful associate, genuinely in their own right. We can create the space to continue to invest in ourselves. That's both clinically, probably also wider skill sets as well. So kind of communication skills, maybe investment skills. There's a nice amount of space there to be able to invest yourself, and usually there's a really good return on investment when you do invest yourself. So in a more kind of perhaps more kind of technical or key metric, we want to offer up the average daily yield. Now, it's not the only metric in a dental practice, but we believe it's such a really good one that every clinician should be monitoring their ADY, their average daily yield. So to give an example, if a dentist were to gross £20,000 in a month and they worked 10 days in that month, £20,000 divided by the 10 days gives an ADY of £2,000 a day. It's an average. We recommend we measure it over the course of a month, but it's such a really kind of rich piece of information to tell you how well you're doing financially. It's almost like your micro profit and loss metric as an associate or a clinician. So
yeah, just sorry to cut across you, Ross, but the ADY, if we know the ADY of kind of any dental practice in the country, we broadly know if that's a successful business or not, and if the associates really kind of honed their craft or not, essentially. So it really kind of tells you so much so quickly. Much like if you, slightly joking but almost true, if you knew someone ate 10,000 calories a day, you can predict what they might look like. If you know what someone's ADY is, you can predict what the numbers look like in the background. So I kind of can't stress enough how you want to be on the case of your principal, saying, you know, what's my ADY? What can I do to improve it? It's a really key marker of success in dentistry.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, you kind of almost glide in naturally, which is, you know, it is natural in a sense, because the one thing you want to do is, if you are looking to improve your own personal situation, collaboration with the practice is a really important element of it. You want to be working out not just, you know, maybe more surgery days, but you want to be making sure you're getting the right type of patient. So there might be a feedback loop in place there. You maybe want to be working out kind of marketing tactics with your practice owner and you know, the wider team in the practice. You do want to be collaborating with the team in the practice as well, because, you know, this symbiosis enables everyone to you know, to get a better outcome. So it does kind of create, you know, it does require kind of a conscious effort there, I suppose. You kind of can't just turn up at 5 to 9, breeze into surgery and break the tools out. It will be a bit wider than that, but the return you'll get from that collaboration is monumental. Okay, yeah, a bit more technical again, or very technical, I suppose, and we you know, we'll head down the kind of the tax rabbit hole very briefly. But you know, you do want a limited company in place. That is going to be your best platform to optimize your financial outcomes there. So we want to essentially retain as much of that cash that you possibly can generate it. And you know, 9 times out of 10, a limited company is going to be the right thing for a dentist in the UK. Possibly if you're wholly NHS, there's a limitation with it. But we've got to bear in mind what your ADY is, because that's going to get you the best outcome there as well. So pretty much a slam dunk. And if anyone doesn't have a limited company, or their accountant is not guiding them on the viability of a limited company, you really do need to pick the phone up, because it's the best tool to minimize your tax exposure as you possibly can. And what we want to do as an associate investor is to make sure we're holding on to all those percentage points we possibly can. So it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of an associate investor there, but I think what we want to provide is the spirit. It's really predictable. You do still have to take ownership of it. We want to make you as tax efficient as we possibly can. There's no debt you're taking on, having to buy a practice for £1 million or whatever the price might be, and you are collaborating with people, but you're not responsible with them. It's a nice, safe environment where you can exercise your craft and win really quite big. So I thought what I'd do actually is kind of add a little bit of extra color there, because if we're talking about wealth building, which was actually kind of top of the requirement in there, I thought it's helpful just to step back for a moment and actually kind of just be very clear about what investments there are capable out there. Because yes, owning a practice is one way to build wealth, but I think my point is that there are other ways. So I'm going to just whistle through, and probably for slightly flow reasons, I'll start at the top left with the green wad of cash. There is is cash investment. Now, so you can save your surpluses in your limited company and keep them in your Lloyd's deposit account. But I tell you what, Lloyd's will absolutely love you for that, because you're not getting any return on your investment there. Cash is an asset, but it's not a very good one. You've got to have its functionality, but it's not where you should be investing your placing your attention for investment over a long period of time. The red little marker there, is designed to represent stocks and shares. Now, stocks and shares includes pension investments. It includes your ISAs, just direct holdings of stocks and shares. If you want to partner up with an IFA, we work with an excellent one. But the point there is that stocks and shares are a pretty well-trodden path for building your assets and your wealth. Third one, I won't dwell too long on there. It's actually loan notes and bonds. So bond is a loan note. You probably won't encounter it, but it's massive in the global economy. Fourth one, kind of classic UK mentality, is to own property. Different shapes and flavors of property: buy to lets, holiday lets, commercial, land, development. They're all options out there. My experience, you've got to like doing it or not. Well, I think that goes with any asset investment. You've got to like it and enjoy it because you know it's your money. You've got to look after it. The fifth one, represented by the flower pot, is a personal business. So your dental practice goes in there as well. So it could be a florist down the road that you invest in and hope to grow and build in value. But your dental practice is also a personal asset. It's something which you're connected to, something which you're deeply invested in. But it should be a business and it should grow your wealth. So it is an option. And that's what we're going to talk about practice ownership in a moment. The sixth asset is commodities. So gold, silver, other kind of precious metals are in there. I know people who swear by gold investment. It's a classic safe haven. Very important in the global economy again. The eighth component of asset building is unorthodox assets. So that could be, we've seen clients who invest in everything. Classic cars, artwork, wine, whiskey, watches, the list goes on. There is often money to be made. But again, you've got to have this kind of vested interest in it and be really keen and enthusiastic. Last one in there, which I know some people will find contentious, but I do believe cryptocurrency is, so that's the logo for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. It's embedded enough to be now considered, in my opinion, an asset there. So
I might just jump in, sorry, Ross. So to be clear, what we're suggesting is almost everyone who's in the audience right now should be looking at all of these and choosing kind of one to be looking at, maybe two, and just kind of figuring out almost what they're interested in, because we completely believe passive income's a myth. So, for example, if you choose to go into practice ownership, that's going to take a lot of time. But equally, if you kind of really get into cryptocurrency as well, that's going to take a lot of your time and attention and thought. So none of these well, I suppose your pension is the most likely thing where you'll put money away and you tend not to think about it, and then it's there for you when you retire. But we do think, often people think buying the practice is the golden goose. I think you've already got the golden goose, to be honest. You've entered a fantastic industry. And yes, economic times are tough, but it's still, demand for dentistry is ever growing. It's still a fantastic place to be. Now, it is a tougher market, which actually doesn't affect associates that much. So, over the past 4 years, minimum wage has gone from £16,000 to £24,000 today. So that's a 40% increase in the minimum wage, and that distorts all wages. So all the practices you've worked at have had to essentially just pay people more. That will have happened, but your percentages remained the same, and maybe even the prices have gone up. So actually, it's quite well protected as an associate. Again, I'm not trying to put you off practice ownership. It's just the realities that you're in a fantastic industry. There's lots of development you can bring on board. If you're looking at your ADY, you should be commercially successful, and then you can figure out actually what you like putting your cash in. And Ross is going to come on and kind of give a view of what pretty much kind of vanilla investment might look like, and then how much wealth that will build through time, which again was the number one thing that came up on the Slidos. You're here today because you're interested in building wealth for the future and kind of creating that financial freedom. So almost the problem with dentistry is there's too many good options. So that's why always reverting back to the income, wealth, time gratification, what the trade-offs are and what you want for yourself. Sorry, Ross.
Dan,
sorry.
Interject. I have a question. So I'm onto this, Ross, but what happens if you don't pick one of the 8 options? What happens if you just leave it in the bank in a sort of relatively high interest account, or you don't take any proactive measures to invest in one of those 8 categories?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing I'd say is that no one will come along and tell you off. So part of why we even talk about this is so that we can take that first step in empowering anyone who listen to me, basically, because you can quite easily just accumulate some cash or even spend all of your cash, but you could just keep it in the bank account. And as I as I kind of said earlier, Lloyds will be rubbing their hands together with glee because they'll be making money off your money in the background. So, yeah, I think there's.
I can jump in as well, Ross. I just saw something literally just before this on Twitter. It was someone saying a pack of polos in 35 years ago, so 1990, was 10p. It's now £1.19. Like, I know it's 35 years, but cash is not what you want to have too much of hanging around. I will say, Sonia, to make it even worse, we've encountered quite a few dentists who've been very successful dentists and practice owners, but they've spent most of their money through their journey. They come to us at 70 and say, right, I want to sell my business and I want to retire. And there's not that much there to sell. So it's they probably wish they knew this stuff a few years earlier. But it's kind of getting that balance right that, you know, we're all for living an enjoyable life and kind of treating yourself nice, but building that future exit doesn't have to involve a practice, and actually becomes almost the most rewarding side of it as well, because there's kind of tax advantage to doing it. You know, if you want to pay yourself £10 more, that costs you £5 to the taxman, whereas you could put that in a pension. And Ross, what would that be in a pension?
Well, we were talking about it last night, weren't we? But
this is how boring we are. We literally were speaking about pensions last night till late into the evening. So yeah, but it was 10 grand. If you put 10 grand in a pension, it was 12 grand or something. It goes in.
Yeah. So I mean, using arbitrary numbers, but we were talking about it and saying, well, look, if you're a higher rate taxpayer, which again, kind of as a dentist, you probably should be, or use a limited company to protect yourself from it. But broadly speaking, 6 grand of your cash magically turns into 10 grand into your pension, using kind of the tax relief basis there. So it's wonderful. There's a massive return on investment if a pension is now. Pension has got to be the right thing for you. It's kind of the purpose of kind of highlighting these options out there. The trouble is, you'll always get someone saying you should do something like, so an IFA will say do a pension, which is not wrong, but if you've got a different risk appetite, you might actually want to invest that 6 grand in Bitcoin because you believe it's got a better potential return on outcome. So it's what's right for you.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to kind of highlight some numbers here again, just to kind of show the potential outcome you can get by being an associate investor. So I've grabbed hopefully some pretty reasonable numbers. So bear with me for a moment. But you're an associate earning £17.50 a day. So that's your ADY. We'll have you working 14 days in the month. So about 3.5 days of the week. Your pay rate from that at 45% after lab fees as well will be about 10k. So let's make sure you're in a nice, efficient, limited company environment. That will be approximately 20% tax, which you're going to have to pay to the tax man. So you've got 8k left over. Now we can reduce that if we're looking at a pension, and the pension is going to be your investment. But let's not do that. Let's just keep it simple. We've got 8k. We've paid our tax to the tax man. And we've got 4k to spend, but we're going to invest 4k into a nicely blended, kind of stocks and shares fund. So we're going to do that for 25 years. Now, it will take discipline, but for 25 years as a dentist, we'll have you retiring nicely age 55 and modelling a 5% return, which I'm told by, IFA's investors is pretty prudent. They reckon the long-term growth of the stock market has historically been 10% per annum, but let's just do it at 5% just to show you some numbers. Your 4k a month, which does accumulate to 1.2 million over those 25 years, but almost doubles in value. So you've got a potential investment pot at age 55 of just over 2.3 million quid. So it does take discipline. Got to want to do it. You've got to live off the 4k, 4k for you, 4k for your partner, maybe, whatever it might be. But my point, I suppose, is you can get there.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, that's very conservative. So the ADY is is not particularly high. It's not working. It's only working 14 days a month, and probably the balancing thing is only paying yourself 4K. That might be the sticky thing. But then again, my recommendation would be to look at the ADY. It's not even necessarily working more days, but as a general associate dentist, particularly if you're doing aligners, you should be looking more towards £2,500 ADY. That's perfectly reasonable.
There's a lot of wiggle room in all this. And, I've just chosen stock market investment. You might believe that cryptocurrency is going to be more volatile, but grow much more over that long period of time. It could be artwork, it could be wine, it could be whiskey, the list goes on. But it's interesting you kind of mentioned then, Dan, about the kind of the fact that you've got to live off 4K. I think there's a belief that practice owners, well, to use your words earlier, is the golden goose. But of course, if you buy into a practice, or even if you set one up, you are going to be spending a pretty reasonable amount on the debt that you've used to acquire that practice. So the dynamics are, I don't want to say we're busting myths, Dan, are we? But it's
no, I think everyone. One of the things that Ross and I spend a lot of our time doing is what we call the discovery process, which is associates who are probably the people on the fence and people that are definitely buying. So they come to us. They may have a practice in mind. They might be thinking about a squat, and we kind of ask them why they're thinking that. And occasionally, the answer is they want to make more income. That's probably the key myth to break initially, that there's more income in practice ownership straight away. So that's for very many reasons, but essentially you're taking on a load of debt, and you'll have to subsidize the business to some degree. That doesn't necessarily put people off. Again, it comes back to that income and wealth trade-off, because you will also be buying an asset. But there's a rule. I think, Sonia, we discussed it when we did that podcast a few years ago, that essentially, if you're buying a dental business, your kind of number one strategy has to be to grow it, because unless you grow it, it won't be financially sustainable. The good news is, if you grow it, you'll actually be able to pay yourself as well. So that's why I say it's a bit of a kind of lateral step in your career to buy a practice, even though it was the kind of traditional pathway through dentistry. It's way more lateral than it used to be, I suppose. There definitely used to be an element of the principal would hand over the keys to the associate, and he'd then hand them down to the next dentist in there as well. Whereas now it's the businesses are bigger, the debts are higher, there's more elements to think about. But actually, that's really exciting if it excites you. So again, the income will drop off. Your wealth potential is kind of not guaranteed, but its opportunity to be higher is higher. And if you have gratification by, I think it was third on the list that people said they're keen to be responsible for a team, that's a big one as well, because essentially a business is a kind of chaotic collection of people, and that's before we even start talking about the patients. So if all of this stuff, as I'm talking, is going, oh, this sounds like an exciting challenge, then practice ownership may well be for you. If you're looking at it thinking, well, I was just actually wanting to have a work-life balance, have a good career I enjoyed, take all my holidays, and have a comfortable retirement, I believe kind of what Ross was talking about before, it will be hard to execute, but you can lock in those objectives of work-life balance, good retirement, and great career strategically, simply, if that makes sense. Whereas with I suppose the practice with a dental buying a practice, there's like a simple overarching strategy, which is you need to grow it, but the detail in how you execute that becomes much more complicated and much more uncertain. And again, if your personality likes uncertainty and likes risk, and likes something that's quite consuming, again, practice ownership probably is looking like the right thing for you.
Dan,
Sorry, go on, Sonia.
So the 4 bullets that you've got there, I think it's quite obvious what the pressures are and what the work-life balance challenges are, and obviously patients, everyone knows that. But can you explain a bit more about the debt side of it? So when you buy a practice, how does the debt work? Where does it come from? How does it get paid? What happens if you don't pay it? All of that.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll take that one, Dan. So we've we've been involved in, hundreds, if not thousand, purchases and sales and acquisitions and squats as well, more recently as well. The bit that I think it's just I always see when I'm modeling it is that current pricing in dental practices, much like the residential housing market, is priced based on what you can afford. So that practice, if it's generating, let's say, 200 grand of profit, it probably won't be surprising to me when we look at the modeling, we break it down. Whoa, the price that that practice is going at, which might be, I don't know, 1.4 million or something like that. Well, when you reverse engineer what your monthly loan repayments are, it just about kind of aligns up with itself. So, it happens time and time again. So when Dan says, well, look, if you buy a practice, you kind of have to want to grow it. Of course, you don't have to, but just know that you'll be living off less money because the price of the practice and the amount of debt that you've had to borrow to acquire that practice, it's pretty much going to kind of line up. You're asking Sonia, like, where do you get the debt from? We go to high street lenders most of the time who look at dentistry and go, that's an amazing sector. We believe it's pretty risk free. People are always going to want to look after their healthcare. So from a bank's perspective and risk terms, they're quite happy to do this, knowing that you're on the hook for it. Essentially, they will expect you to put some skin in the game. They won't lend you 100% because what incentives have you got then? You could just walk away. So they're going to want you to put in a good chunk of your own cold hard cash, and they essentially kind of, they've got you with a noose around the neck then. Not that this is a bad thing. I'm just saying it's aligning incentives. They're happy to lend you a good chunk of the money, maybe 85% of the money, but you're going to have to put a good chunk in so that everyone's lining up and we're making sure we're continuing that business.
So 150k on a £1 million business, is that right, Ross?
Yeah.
And will they take a personal guarantee on every one as well?
A bank will take whatever they can get in terms of security.
Funny that.
They don't want to be left out in the cold if anything kind of goes wrong. So the lending on that, they'll probably spread over 15, maybe 20 years. It'll probably be more than that £4,000 a month that I was talking about just a moment ago in the associate thing. So this is all good. If you're excited by the opportunity and you like to look at your marketing numbers every month and see that you've had 100 inquiries last month, you will feel warm and cozy inside knowing that your asset is really and persistently increasing in size and value and profitability.
I think that's what I'd say. It's the word might be kind of, if you're happy for it to be your obsession for at least, I'm going to say 3 years, and that kind of means you're probably not going to be able to take any holidays, and when the boiler breaks on Sunday mornings, it's definitely you that's sorting it out, and you're going to want to find out things that are difficult to find out. Our biggest pain often is finding out inquiry data once it's hit the practice. And that's, the principal might want it, but how do you get your front desk team to collect it? How do you ratify it's accurate? And it's really hard work to do it. You can get there, but it feels like you're swimming against the tide. But to put it in perspective, we had a client who started working with us a year out from buying his first site. He bought it for £1 million. I think it turned over 800k when he purchased it. But within 4 years, he'd got it to about 4.5 mil because he kind of listened to everything we said in the year building up and just was a bit of a force of nature, to be perfectly frank. He continued working other associate positions and was working 6 days a week for the first year. And then kind of every 6 months dropped a day. So he's now down to 3 days a week, massive turnover, almost 30% EBITDA, and he's built an amazing business. He's like on one end of the spectrum, like he's particular. You could kind of deploy him in any business and he'd be incredibly successful. But it's just to highlight the rewards are there, the kind of tactics that you have to deploy and the principles of viewing the business are the same as they've ever been, and we can help you with that. But often the time of when you deploy them and how you deploy them is the real skill, and that's that's a really big responsibility on the principal. But again, a lot of people like having a lot of responsibility, and it does make it really rewarding. Yeah, well, actually, yeah, thanks for flicking to this, Ross, because it's quite useful. So there's a big disconnect between how you make money as a principal and how you make money as a dentist. So I came up with this 8 years ago because I kept kind of hitting against the wall when I was working with principals. They kind of knew what they'd heard the phrase working on the business rather than in it, but they'd kind of go to me, but Dan, if I'm not in surgery on that Friday, that's 3 grand that doesn't come over the till. Like, how could anything be better than that? I was like, I realize what's happening here. It's the disconnect of when you do something and when it pays you. So so I created this so you can kind of visually see it. Hopefully it'll make sense. But so on the horizontal axis, the vertical axis is the time for you to get paid for something that you undertake from immediate to a long time in the future. And on the horizontal axis is the complexity of how you collect that payment. So hopefully this will make sense as we walk through. So in the bottom left-hand corner, we've got fee generation. So that's the dentistry that happens in the dental practice. It pays you immediately, and the complexity of how you collect that payment is very low. So if someone comes in, you do a load of fillings, they pay at the front till. So it's immediate and it's simple. It's also lucrative and it's also predictable. So you jumping in, Ross, sorry.
I was going to say, it's not say we're not saying the dentistry is not complex. We can do it, but the economic capture of the value, the dentistry is within your field of expertise, and it's not complicated to get the patient to pay at the front desk.
Yeah, so the caveat with anything we ever say, we know nothing about clinical dentistry, and you don't want our opinion on it. We just look at things from how to get better kind of commercial rewards from dentistry. So thank you for inserting that, Ross, because it's definitely not simple in that sense. But you can see, so essentially many, if not most, dental practice owners just spent all their time in there, because if I don't do it, there's no money in the till. And actually, it's a lot of money, so I may as well do it. Now, I don't think it's optional anymore, whereas 5 years ago, it was kind of optional whether or not you looked to the outer layers. You could still get paid pretty well by gunning it as a principal dentist. Now, the economic conditions have completely changed. Energy's more expensive, wages are more expensive, it's more competitive. You've got to spend way more on marketing. So essentially, I don't think it is sustainable for you to be spending all of your time in fee generation. So what would you do next, and how would it add value? So the next layer out is operations. I like to delineate between administration, which is everything you need to do for the fee generation, the dentistry to happen, and operations. So operations is a proactive activity where you're trying to get real-time information, interpret it, put changes in the operational system, figure out if they've worked or not, figure out if you did them properly, figure out if you committed to it, and then make the next round of changes. So it's iterative. It's quite reflective, it's very difficult, and you're going to get things wrong. So the complexity of how you're getting paid is much, much higher, because you're trying to kind of put pathways in place so your operational team deliver better results. And the time for you to get paid for this is at the end of every year when we look at your profit. Have you ran a good operational system? Are you profitable, essentially? So it's very hard, and there's kind of every reason for it not to work. So that, and there's also a timing element as well. So I sometimes kind of use the analogy of a piece of sushi in the sun. So bear with me. So someone puts out a delicious piece of sushi on a nice sunny day. If you eat it straight away, it's fantastic. You've had a lovely meal. You can go for a nice walk. If you wait an hour, might be a bit not very nice. If you wait 24 hours, it could actually send you to the hospital. So same thing, 3 different ways at 3 different times and massively different outcomes. So what you're looking for in operations, so if we take dealing with an inquiry, for example, if you deal with that within 5 minutes versus an hour versus 24 hours versus not really dealing with it, they're radically different outcomes. But unless you're honest with yourself and get your team to be honest with you in how you're dealing with those leads, you'll kind of never get there, and you'll just be scratching your head all the time and probably conclude that marketing doesn't work. It does work. Usually the sales system of a business doesn't work, and that's just one of many systems. The next layer out is strategy. So the kind of complexity here steps up quite radically, because you're not just looking in at the business now and trying to figure out how to improve things, but you're actually looking out at the world, and trying to synthesize things. So that might be in the industry, that might be speaking to Sonia about bringing aligners in, might be speaking to me and Ross, but actually it might be in something completely different. It could be, in technology fields. One of our dentists is forever sending us WhatsApps of when the robot nurses are going to come out, robot hygiene, all of this stuff. But it can actually be even more kind of abstract stuff that might just inspire you to think of something in a different way, so you can bring it into your business, make sense of it, and ultimately turn it into revenue and profit. The time for you to get paid for this is roughly 5 years. I mean, the clock could start for you guys today if you kind of already got a practice in mind, but the time for you to get that asset payoff and truly get the upside, I used to say it was 3 to 5 years. Now it's more like 5, for all the conditions that I've pointed out. So strategy isn't done in most dental practices. Strategy is not being an ideas guy or kind of blue sky thinking or anything like that. It's actually very disciplined. It should be quite highly documented, with clear accountability and kind of rationale behind why you're doing it. So the next layer out is leadership and culture. And I always say it's a bit crude to say you get paid for this, but it's kind of what makes the whole journey worthwhile. Because if you're not interested in this remotely, you'll probably hate having a business. So there's more kind of extroverted people who really love it. Some people, well, difference between me and Ross, like I really like doing this stuff. Ross doesn't mind doing that stuff, and that's a nice balance. And it kind of works well as a leadership team. But you kind of have to do it. Again, it's more relevant than ever. When I first started speaking about it in businesses, dental practices, it was a bit, the feedback specifically at the time was, this is very woolly. And the answer is, it is very woolly, because you're looking in at the business, looking out at the world, reflecting on what your own values are, and then how you create an environment where you can have people kind of execute those values as well. So it's not scientific. It's very kind of qualitative in how you appraise it and see if it's working. But yeah, it's you've got to be servicing all those areas of the business. That's what will capture you the asset value. It doesn't, yeah, you could have a business manager in operations, for example, so it doesn't necessarily have to be you in everything. But the final thing to really mention is that fee generation box has a gravitational pull. So everything, every minute of time that you've got is pulling you towards fee generation, because there's patients are cancelling. It's the noisiest thing in the business, because it's the tip of the spear of where the cash gets collected. And if you don't collect the cash, there's no business. And that will always be the balance or the dance that you're trying to do, basically to steal time to build your future business. And again, if this is something that excites you and you go, wow, this is a big thing, I would absolutely recommend looking more at having a practice. Is there anything you wanted to add there, Ross?
No, I think that's a really good summary. What I might appreciate is that our viewers here might be thinking, great, I absorbed all of that. Okay, practice ownership is still for me. I just wanted to kind of link that part together. So what happens kind of net? Well, you kind of talked about the strategy kind of quite well. I think it can be the case that actually get really excited about practice ownership and you go out and kind of buy the first thing, which, it's natural human nature. As soon as you get that little bit of cash in the pay packet at the end of the month, let's go out and immediately buy the first thing we see. That might be okay. But of course, when you think about it statistically, it probably isn't. So, the funny little pictures we've got here is essentially just designed to kind of highlight that if we're serious about building wealth in practice ownership, you want to stack the deck in your favor. So, whilst a practice can look beautiful or run down, it's not just the physical element of that. And quite often what we're doing when we're helping people acquire practices is not just visually see whether they're looking run down, there's also kind of look underneath the bonnet and see whether the non-visible things are leading you to a good practice acquisition or not. Should you walk away, or should you consider squat ownership, etc., etc.?
And this is more relevant than ever. So one of our clients has just pulled out from his first acquisition, actually, because the more we did the due diligence, a practice that looked kind of fantastic was absolutely awful. the problem is, if you're not doing that due diligence, he would have proceeded because he'd have probably got the money from the bank, and just ended up having a very rough few years, essentially. So, people might try and get you to put deposits down. Don't do it until you've spoken to us or your advisor, because you want to be confident that you're kind of buying something good. It's worth knowing that I'm sure you all know this, but any brochure will make the business look better than it is. And it's the detail behind it that we're looking for. And equally, as much as possible, we're trying to understand if it's CQC compliant, or like how old the kit is, and all of these different things. It's often difficult to do, but if you get a collaborative seller, you can work your way through it. Equally, actually, are you buying the business off someone who's going to be a good person to buy it off, or someone who's going to be an absolute nightmare? And that can be an absolute spectrum as well. So
Yeah.
you're trying to figure all these things out through the journey.
Well, we know you're going to go into the red, but we just don't want you to go into the red any further or deeper than you need to be. So whether that's, the wrong tax advice, or whether it's a massive plan list that's got maybe some supervised neglect lurking in there, or a geography where you've got plenty of opportunity there, rather than something that's maybe kind of super rural or something because it's just down the road. There are nuances to it, and if we're going to do it, it's always our objective to make sure you get the best platform and the best outcome, because you've told us you want to build wealth, so you don't want to start off in more deficit than you absolutely need to do.
I'm appreciative of time. So what I might do, Ross, could you just go back to the income, wealth, time, gratification slide? Because I think we can almost do a side to side based on that to just really hopefully hit home. So if we look at income, essentially, if the most income today is the most important thing to you, associate wins there, undoubtedly. It's kind of one of the best paid jobs that I'm aware of, where you can be pretty average at your job and earn £100,000. In any other industry, that you kind of towards the top of your game. That's not to say, in 3, 4, 5 years' time as a principal, you could be earning lots more, but that's way more dependent on whether or not you're a good entrepreneur, which is much more of an unknown, and is actually more due to kind of your worldview and outlook and how you approach things. Wealth, it's kind of like it's harder to say which one wins here, because they're both pretty good. So taking the kind of more conservative approach, ending up with £2.5 million is a pretty good result, and I think that's particularly conservative. There are more like greater kind of windfalls available in practice ownership, but again, it comes back to that, like, are you the person that wants to do it? Because there's no guarantees. There are practices now selling at significant losses, it's worth saying, just because of the economic climate. So they're both.
I'd probably also sprinkle squat practice ownership in there as well. I think there's a massive fallacy that a practice is expensive, it's £1 million. I'll just build one myself and I won't have to pay that money over, but you just pay it in a slightly different way. So the wealth element of a squat practice is no better for a first-time owner, in my opinion.
I'd agree. So it's very much coming from your skills as an entrepreneur, essentially. Time. So there's the few definitions. If a big part of your career is going to be work-life balance, I'd say associate definitely wins. But if you're really happy to spend your time kind of thinking about the business, working on the business, then that's a great way to spend your time. Possibly retirement could come quicker if you built a large practice and kind of built many millions of pounds of upside. But again, no guarantees with that. You will have to be very good at what you do. But yeah, it's if you want to take holidays, if you want to work 3 days a week, it's so easy to achieve that as an associate and be financially successful. Like, there's a definite pathway. It's strategically easy to achieve it. It's hard to execute. I kind of always want to make sure I'm not kind of saying it's a walk in the park. It will be hard to execute, but on the theory behind it is straightforward. Finally, gratification. Really think about this one, guys. And I might say we use psychometric test called the Big Five. So if you want to drop us a line, we kind of bulk buy coupons for it, so we get them cheaper. But let us know, and we'll send you out a code so you can do your own test. It will give you a steer as to what type of characteristics make a good principal, or will make you find it much harder, essentially. And it is quite predictive as well. Ross, was there anything you wanted to add to those, or have kind of given a view on them?
No, I think it's it's one of those things where, like, I know it's annoying one way that we say it depends. Unfortunately, it does depend, and that's the world we operate in now. It is complex. What's right for you might be wrong for your colleague, or vice versa.
Yeah, and be very skeptical of any kind of dogmatic advice as well. It's very much kind of starts from what you want your next kind of 30 odd years to look like.
So I've got a couple of questions actually, which I'll field straight away. So someone asked earlier, do we have any recommendations for kind of investing, any platform investing for stocks and shares? So I'm a bit agnostic about platforms that you might DIY it yourself. Someone who used Vanguard and Nutmeg, Hargreaves Lansdown, AJ Bell, or other ones. But I'm a bit agnostic about it really, because it is a DIY method. The alternative kind of strategy, essentially to use a financial advisor, which I know is going to cost money. It's reasonably well proven that it avoids the temptation, shall we say, to dip in and change the kind of methodology. You won't get the kind of the consistent returns over a long period of time that I was modeling earlier. If you're DIYing it, then arguably it's a slightly different strategy. Related to that, someone's asked about the IAT change in tax rules to pensions. So could it be a better method to utilize ISAs, for example? I think probably the thing I'd highlight there is that whilst ISAs are tax-friendly wrapper, the trouble is you've got to pay tax to get the money in the first place. So I think it's a bit of a red herring to say, to think it's going to save a whole field of taxes, because the trouble is if you earn £10,000, you've got to pay £4,000 worth of tax to get £6,000 in your ISA in the first place. We've got a significant number of clients who are investing through their own limited company, so it avoids that massive tax hit, and it's invested at the limited company level, which is what they want to do to save taxes, but that actually doesn't change the inheritance tax situation. We're looking at more complicated structures again, where possibly having kids as shareholders in the company. So I'm sorry again, it depends.
We've intentionally not had too much tax in today, because Simon and Ross went through it last time. But I mean, there is absolutely no slam dunk with tax, which is why we're kind of saying, kind of get clear about what you want and then figure out how you get the most percentage points, because every pathway you look at, there's some kind of sneaky tax that gets you, and there's some mega compromise. But it's aligning those trade-offs again. There's no solutions, only trade-offs.
Well, more than ever as well, what we're finding, it's one of the reasons we set up Hive the way we did, is that you can't just deal with one thing in isolation. So more than ever, we're working with our partner financial advisor, because it's not just about the investment thesis, it's also about how do you get the tax optimal outcome of it as well. So that kind of collaborate, much like we were saying, collaboration with your practice owner and the team of the practice gets a better outcome. Getting collaboration between your advisors where relevant is also gets a better outcome. So someone's asked for a pension recommendation. If they contact afterwards, I'll give a specific recommendation for pension investments. Because again, it's important. We want to eke out all those percentage points we possibly can, because that will compound over a long period of time. I've had someone else. We've got the tax rates coming thick and fast here. So, what's a realistic effective tax rate that should be achievable as an associate? So, depends on your earnings level a little bit, but I believe you should, if circumstances are right for you, a limited company gives you the best possible platform, should get you a 20% tax rate, but you can also utilize other tax deductible expenses in a company, which you won't have as an individual or a sole trader. So
I might just dive in there, Ross. So the limited company isn't the slam dunk, it's the start of the story. That's why it's kind of thinking of it as a platform, then thinking about your personal affairs, figuring out what can go through the company, and kind of it gives you more options. Whereas if you're self-employed, you pay the maximum amount of tax possible, and that's final.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. No wiggle room, no clever exercising, no clever timing. That's it. You're done like a kipper.
Yeah.
Can I ask something about the limited company?
Yeah, sure.
So I revisited that idea a few times with my accountant. By the way, I'm rubbish with the figures, money, accountancy. And he said, because you're on your own, there is no point being a limited company. There is no advantage for you. And I've been hearing from other people, yes, there is advantage. But I mean, my accountant is also a good friend of mine. So as an associate dentist, self-employed, is there any advantage to me just being on my own?
Usually, but it is down to the numbers. So usually there's an advantage to doing it. But as Dan was alluding to, you kind of have to just work at it a little bit. So what we'd want to do, and we'll have to kind of take this offline, but we'll run the numbers for your specific situation to determine what the outcomes could be. Because it's just down to the maths. Unfortunately, in that situation, the one big caveat to limited companies, and someone's actually asked this as a question. What if I've got NHS superannuation? And the trouble there is you're comparing apples against pears. So as a limited company, you can't claim NHS superannuation. That's just a fact. So, is it better to have the NHS superannuation pension or the tax rate? I kind of can't tell that. What I would say, most people say that the NHS superannuation pension is pretty decent. So often that circumvents the limited company aspect. But if you've got mixed revenue, so you're undertaking both NHS and private revenue, there's a really strong argument to get your cake and eat it there and have a limited company for your private revenue and keep your NHS superannuation as well. That's often the best of both worlds.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Shall I take opinion on buying an NHS practice? So from an economic perspective, the only way you make an NHS business viable is doing less dentistry. So the UDA rate isn't going to increase. It's doing doing less dentistry quicker. So you probably have to be doing. Do you reckon it's still 40 UDAs a day, Ross, for it to start to stack up financially?
Yeah, it was kind of north of 30 that it just had to be that to kind of cover the running costs of everything that's gone up. Like staff wages have gone up far in excess of the inflationary rate you get for NHS UDAs, and the extra kind of fly in the ointment is that it's often extremely difficult to find an associate dentist who'll undertake a UDA for a level that will allow you to make kind of any margin on that NHS. So,
I mean, it's particularly polarized on it, probably, but my opinion for the last 10 years has been kind of an NHS contract is only worth something if you're selling, because people will pay you for it, but you're rarely actually going to make money from it, and it's going to bring in double the footfall to your practice. It's just a harder business that's less rewarding, but it used to be valuable. It's really nowhere near as valuable as it once was. We've seen
prices are declining.
It might be not as much as half the value, but some kind of big kind of or mid-level groups we're working with that were heavily NHS. It's kind of tough news for them because they've kind of gone with an NHS-led approach, and it essentially doesn't have as much profit in it. So it's obviously the devil's in the detail, but broadly speaking, I would look for a private practice, and any business you want to buy that you're growing should be a fixer-upper. So I know we're saying you want to buy a good business. Again, it's that word platform we're going to use. It's a good enough business that we can get in at a decent price, but we know how we're going to scale it up.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, guys. And I'm just aware of time and I want everyone to get back to enjoying their Thursday evenings. But I wanted to say a massive thank you to Ross and Dan and to Hive as well for hosting this webinar alongside us. Thank you as well to you guys. The participation and the questions have been great, and we really hope at least part of this webinar has inspired you to look down a new direction or to get in touch with Hive or with us about where you want to take your dental business. So everyone who attended the webinar this evening, you'll be getting the recording. So feel free to watch over bits that you didn't quite catch or bits that you want to watch again. And then most importantly, both us and Hive are there to talk you through the next steps. So take a screenshot, take a picture of these emails now. I'll also put them in the recording that goes out as well. And we really look forward to helping you guys elevate your dental practice as you would like to as well. So I think we will wrap up there. But again, a massive thank you to all of you who attended, and also a special thank you to you, Dan, and to you, Ross, as well. Have a lovely rest of your weeks, and we will see you very soon indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks.
Bye.